Hi, in today's video I'll be showing you how I did this portrait using watercolors. I've used watercolor tube paint for the background and Derwent watercolor pencils for the portrait itself. So as you can see, I've started off with a sketch. The sketch is done in Faber Castell's Graphite Aquarelle, that is a water-soluble graphite pencil. The reason for me using a water-soluble graphite pencil is so that I don't have any harsh graphite lines showing through my watercolor drawing when it's finished. If you do use normal graphite, try to keep it very light or lighten it as you work with the paint over those areas. So what you can see I'm doing here, I am just wetting the paper section by section and adding color on as I require it. You can see I'm not putting too much of detail in there, putting in the water, just getting the background to have color everywhere, and I'm working section by section. My page is taped down with masking tape to hold the paper in place and also to keep its shape. But I am coming through with a hairdryer just to dry up those areas as I work section by section. Using the hairdryer helps also to keep the paper, or let the paper get back into shape of its original shape and not be as warped as it would be if it would be air drying. Remember to keep your hairdryer not on too high and not too close to the paper. Try to use a cool setting or a very low heat if your hairdryer has those settings. So you can see I'm just working back and forth through the background. I've got my tube paint that I'm using for the background. It's the Reeves watercolor tube paint. I'm just mixing it on my palette, and I'm laying some water onto the paper, and I'm just adding the color on top of that and then drying each layer. You can see I am touching the paper when I'm working, but I'm not touching areas that are wet. As I'm drying it, I'm just trying to press the paper just so that it settles back into its original shape and it's not too warped. You can see it's just a layering process, section by section. Just keep layering and layering until you get the look I'm going for. I'm using a variety of brushes for both the pencil and the watercolor, flat brushes for the background and different sizes, and I'm also going to be using some flat brushes as well as round brushes, different sizes, when I'm going to be using the Derwent watercolor pencils on the girl herself. So as you can see now, I have done the background and I'm getting started on the face. I'm layering in the lighter colors, and I'm also going to be adding in the shadow areas. Pay close attention to your reference photo and see that the areas that you're covering in the shadows and the highlighted areas, try to keep the highlighted areas as light as possible, because it becomes a bit difficult when you have watercolor and you try to lighten the area. Although, as you'll see a little later in the video, I have made a mistake on one area of the lip, and I used a wet brush just to lift off some of that color, dried it, and then corrected the lip area. Now you need a very light hand when you're using the watercolor pencils. Don't press too hard. Just layering enough color to blend and to cover the area. You don't need to put too thick amounts of pencil on there, just enough to get the area so that when you're blending, you will see, I'm blending it over now, that it just blends over and covers the paper. Once again, we're going to be doing many layers. And remember, try to use, when you're going over the pencil areas with a wet brush, try to go over the lighter areas first and then go over the darker areas. If you try to go over the darker areas before going onto a light area, you can transfer some of that dark color onto the lighter areas where you don't need the color to be darker, and it can also just cause lines or unnecessary lines that you don't need on it, and it's a bit hard to get those colors off. You can try it with like as I did there. I wiped it off with a wet brush, and then I took a piece of paper towel and I just wiped it off. I'm going to let it dry, and then I'll come through again just now and correct that. But to avoid that, try to work on the lighter areas first and then go on to the darker areas. But if you do make a mistake, you can wipe it off that way, or you can even try to use an eraser just to remove some of that before putting the water though. If you apply pencil somewhere and you want to lighten it, you can use an eraser, but you won't be able to remove it if you use water over the area. It will be more difficult, and we don't want to damage the truth of the paper. So as you can see, I'm just layering in more and more color over the different areas, and then blending over with the water, and then drying to the hairdryer, and then moving on to the next layer. So also remember, I usually have 2 glasses with water in it. One is for cleaning my brush, whether I'm using the paints or the pencils, and the other one is for clean water that I use to do the blending of the pencil. I also have got paper towels on the side that I just keep dabbing my brush to take off excess water, so that I don't put too much water onto the drawing, which can run down the page and spread the color in areas you don't need color to be that particular color. For example, the lips, the red can go onto the rest of the face, which is not what I want. So as you can see, I'm going section by section, putting in a layer of pencil with a very light hand. I'm not pressing very hard, putting in the shadows and the highlights and the areas that need more color. I'm using different shades of browns for her skin and natural skin tones. And now I'm moving on to the hair. Remember, with the face, I've also paid attention to looking at my reference photo and getting her expression in with all the facial expression marks, the shadows, the highlights. That helps to give the face a more defined look and show the expression of the person that you are painting. Watercolors can be very loose, or they can be more detailed. You can do a realistic drawing or painting with watercolors. There are many artists that do photorealistic drawings or paintings with watercolors, but in my case it's a bit realistic but not quite. There's still some looseness in my painting and drawing in this particular one. I'm keeping it a little looser because it's been a while since I've worked with watercolors. This portrait has actually reminded me of how much I actually enjoy working with watercolors. It's a very fun medium, and it's also a very you can experiment a lot with it. Watercolors can be experimented a lot. You can go as realistic as you want, you can go as loose as you want. You'll see I did not go into too much detail with this one. I wanted to keep it loose and just enjoy the process. So you can see I'm just going over the face again, touching up on some of the areas that I wanted to have a little bit more color. Going back onto the hair again. Going through with the hairdryer again, just pressing the paper down as well to make sure that it sets back into place. And also remember, after when removing the masking tape, be very careful. Remove it going outwards, away from your piece, so that you don't cause any rips or tear in your paper of your final piece. You can see I'm just adding some more details here and there on her hair, just to give it more of the defined look. Now I'm going on to the flowers in her hair. You can see I'm just adding in the shadow areas. I'm not going to be doing too much detail in it. As I said before, I'm keeping it quite loose, so there's not going to be very detailed flowers in her hair, but just an indication that those are flowers. So we'll be having shadows and highlights as well. You'll see the highlighted areas or the lighter areas, I'm not putting any pigment on it with pencil, because when I'm going to be blending with the water, it is automatically going to get color on, a lighter color from the brush when I go over. Once again, I will come through and go through with multiple layers to make sure that it is covered properly and that it is looking not completely realistic, but a little like flowers. It must look like flowers. There must be some definition, there must be some shadows, there must be highlights. I don't want it completely loose. There must be some detail in there. Not too much detail, but there must be some detail in there. That's just how I wanted this piece to come out. So you can see I'm going through the flowers with the water, just to, once again, not using too much of water, and then using the hairdryer to dry it up. And you will see I am just now going to come through, after I'm going to do the next layer, I'm going to come through with some Derwent Color Soft pencils, just to get in some details here and there, and just add a little bit more color into certain areas of the piece. There you can see I'm coming through with the Color Soft pencils by Derwent, just to add in some details on the hair, the flowers, even some areas on the face. Just to add a little defined lines here and there to give the picture a little more definition and a little bit of detail. So I think that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed this video and I hope it's been helpful to you. If you have any comments or any questions, please comment below. And if you've enjoyed this video and if it's helped you, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.